What's up, guys and gals, and welcome to Veve Vibes, where I love talking all things Veve NFTs, speculation, and of course the market. So today we're talking about I guess somewhat a recent controversial tweet that Comics for Crypto came out with, which is a new comic grading system that they've implemented, and they're working with someone named Shabzart as well as Cherry Charts to kind of implement this, where they can essentially slab your comic making, meaning they can rate it, kind of make it look more official, all that stuff. I'll admit there's some really cool things I like about this. I think it's something like this, you know, being presented by the community is really cool, and I think in some ways it's heading in the right direction, but I think in many ways we're really trying to compare apples and oranges when it comes to the comic aspect. I know there are a lot of people that want to have as many commonalities with the physical comics as well as, you know, NFT digital comics, and just try to make sense of it. You know, let's add a grading system to it, let's do this and, you know, that. But there's also some other people, I don't want to say like myself, like that want it to be completely divorced from the idea of physical and NFT collectors, and have it be, and I think that's part of some of the beauty of some of the NFT comics, is the fact that they are somewhat ambiguous. A lot of it is up to interpretation. A lot of it is subjective and not so much objective. There are some things that are relatively objective, but I do think trying to compare it to something like physical comics, I think is a bit difficult to pull off, let's just say that. So I do have some bullet points here on the left side, so I'm sorry if I kind of like stutter, if I look over or whatever. It's just a big mess of points and some other opinions I've read online and stuff like that. So we're actually going to make a quick switch over to here on the tweet itself. So it says, Comics for Crypto, we've collaborated with Cherry Charts NFT and Shabber Art to develop a free graded slab system for your Veve official NFT comics. Very excited to share the system with you all. You will be on Cherry Charts coming soon. I will admit, this looks amazing. Like this, something like this looks really awesome. Like the grading, the secret rare, the mint number, like just aesthetically, this looks awesome. I love the fact that it's like partially in the background too, like the art and all that stuff. Another tweet by Mr. Pags, who is definitely well known in the community as a low mint comic collector. Especially, he seems to really like Avengers #8, which is the first appearance of Kang. I actually bought an uncommon Kang myself not too long ago for, you know, $240 or whatever it is. I didn't pay attention at all to the mint number. I just looked for the lowest price one, bought it, got it, cool. And so, you know, something like this looks really cool. It's kind of like a cool collage of all this stuff. So I will admit, having community generated stuff like this is really, really awesome. The more that we can kind of get this going on, like it makes me really excited. This is where kind of a lot of the issues happen with people with the grading system. To be honest, I thought this was just a kind of like a guide, but once I started reading it more, where it says, hey, comic grading scale, comic grading system, you know, it seems like, I'm not sure how this works, but in my mind, like I said, sorry if this seems a bit disorganized with the notes and stuff, but when I first saw this, I'm like, is this really how grading comic system works? Is it literally just a linear scale that every half point is equal to 0.5% of the NFT? Like, is that how we're gonna really translate this comic grading scale, where there's a little bit of a difference? So it seems like every 0.5 point grading scale that goes up, you know, you're 5% mint lower. So every 1% down means you get 1 point up, or 0.1 point up. And there's a little bit of difference in that conversion at like 1.8, and once we get above 9, the conversion changes a bit. But I'm like, that just doesn't seem right. That just the fact that your mint number is 1% lower from the max value, your rating goes up by 0.1, and that obviously the numbers change a bit, like I said at the top. But like, is this just like a straight, just flat conversion scale? Because when just for funsies, I just looked up, you know, Ghost Rider, which is probably the most recent and valuable comic that's coming out on Veve just recently, let's just say. I'm looking at some of these grading scales, and these are just people that turned it in, right, for the most part, but it seems like it's more of a bell curve, right? So the pricing, you know, there's a lot of stuff in the middle that are probably anywhere between an 8 or like a 4 to an 8 rating, maybe like a 9 rating, but like as we get higher in 9.2, 9.6, 10, you know, it doesn't seem like there's any 10s rated. Those are very, very few and far between. So I would like to see the rating system maybe be slightly more like either a bell curve, or, and I agree with this, it seems like currently the market sentiment is that, you know, just translating to mint numbers, right? Like I'm just ignoring the scale, the comic book rating scale on the left side, that basically if you're in the bottom 20, if you're in the, I guess technically bottom 20, whatever, the bottom 20% with low mints, let's just say that, usually you, in some ways, you're going to kind of ask for a premium, right? If you have sub 100s, sub 500s, sub 1000s, that kind of stuff, that seems to be the market sentiment. They're like, okay, yeah, you can ask for pretty much for a premium. But a lot of the time, if you're in that like 80 percentile of just all the other like 5 digits, things like that, usually that's just floor price. So it just seems a bit weird that I'm looking at this, and in my mind, what I originally thought is that Like, are these defective? Like, is the floor price starting at 0.5? Does the floor price start at 5.0? Where does the floor price start for the most part? I thought I read a comment, or I heard someone else say they read a comment saying, someone said that floor price starts at 0.5. So floor price starts at the most effective, and I always thought CGC pricing starts at the top. When they look at a comic, it starts at 10 and it starts degrading down, which is kind of a whole nother argument that people have, right? Like, how can you grade a digital comic that actually has no physical defects, no manufacturing, no transport, no handling defects, no nothing like that? And that's kind of where I think we're comparing apples to oranges, because we're trying to compare a physical comic grading scales that starts at 10 and works its way down based on physical defects and deformities, or whatever it is, alignments, color, printing, all kinds of stuff. Veve has none of those issues, so the only thing we have to really compare it to is just mint numbers. I have some other points later, but and some people are also saying too something like crypto and NFTs were mainly created to get rid of third-party scamming / influence. I don't think this is a scam or an influence or anything. Obviously there is an influence. It's an influencer, comics and crypto, working with some other people. They're just giving out their community-based ideas of what I'm not sure if this is what they think a hard and fast rule of pricing should be. Maybe in just in their mind. And I think this too. I really think, in my mind, and I could be completely off, they are actually having a kind of like a forum or like a panel that they're having on Twitter Spaces tomorrow at 12:30 Pacific Standard Time. So tomorrow, so that will be March 17th at about 12:30 p.m. I'll definitely be there asking some questions myself. But in my mind, I feel like comics and crypto actually started here with the whole grading system and this stuff, and they were trying to find a way to work backwards. How are we actually going to grade these comics, and if people start actually taking this seriously, and who knows, like, there could be a grading scale that eventually the community comes up with at some point. It could take 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, because I think at the end of the day, a lot of comic collectors are trying to find ways to differentiate themselves. But in the physical collecting community, I would imagine the only way they can do it for the most part is just by the grading scale. That's the only way you can stand out. It's just by, when I found my comic, I took better care of it and I turned it in and whatever. And you can also get stuff re-rated too. Like, things that were a 0.6 can go up or down. Like, if you get it re-rated, like, I've seen people do that mostly with cards. I don't know about comics for the most part. So even that, like, even like the comic grading scale, even like the grading scale in and of itself is also pretty subjective in a way based on the person grading it. But when it comes to digital comics, if we're basing it off is just mint numbers, we're ignoring rarities, we're ignoring Veve exclusive covers, special mint numbers. Like, for me, when I was going for the Ghost Rider drop, and I still haven't had one, I need to go buy one at some point, is I wanted to get a Ghost Rider comic, whether it was common, uncommon, didn't matter to me. I just wanted a 666 mint, not just actual 666, but just a mint number with the number 666, because Ghost Rider actually made a deal with the devil, and that number is typically related to 666. So whether it's 11,666 or whether it's 16,660, it still has somewhere in the middle 666. In my mind, I put value on that, and I do realize comics and crypto did add up here. Hey, special mint numbers such as the comic was released are considered one of one, which is why probably at the very bottom of this list there's a little like 0.1 remaining. That's probably to take into consideration a lot of the a lot of the 101s. But there's so many 101s where we're talking like these mint numbers and things like that, because that's something, as far as I know, the comic books don't have. They don't have little mint numbers on the sides or anything like that. Maybe they do. I don't know. Like, that's why I'm not a comic book collector. I probably should have started off saying, like, I'm not a comic book collector or physical one by any means. I do own more of the NFTs more recently. I've been really getting into comics over the last like 3 or 4 weeks, so I've been kind of buying some of those up. Never really been like so much of a low mint person for the most part, but a couple things I would like to see either change or maybe just reiterated. To be honest, I don't care how they price the top half, because like I don't really care about low mints. If people want to pump their bags, whether with the chart or with via Twitter or just it doesn't matter to me. Like, if people, whether they intend to do it or not, like, I will admit, like, low mints should be the most expensive. That is just kind of a community universal truth that everyone agrees. Low mints are going to be the most expensive. Then as it goes, the mints go up higher and higher and higher. They're worth a little bit less, but it gets to a point of critical mass. Like, and I think what the community kind of agreed on is roughly around, according to this chart, it's probably somewhere around 7.5%, 8%. That, like, once it gets to a certain point, it's just floor price. Like, it doesn't really matter. So it's like, do we really need to start degrading all these comics that are basically below 5.0? Like, basically all these comics that are above 50% of the comics or 60% of the comics are just defective, and now you basically need to list lower or be really, really low in price. And if 0.5 is the floor price, what if all these 0.5s are gone? Then all of a sudden ones become the new floor price, and then it eventually starts working its way up to 4. But then what if someone wants to list their 1.8 graded thing when the floor price, when all the only things that are left are 3.0s? Now, do you have to actually list yours a certain percentage below floor price? I don't know. Like, and that's what I mean. This kind of like linear graph just seems like very weird, and honestly just seems like just a straight up just math conversion of just the physical comic grading scale to the comic mints in general. So, but I think like the way, in my mind, that VV comics stand out, aside, you know, because the physical, like I said, the physical comic grading is the only way you can really stand out from other comics for the most part. I mean, there's some things like signatures, I'm sure there's things like that. There's also people that like defective things, like they like misprints or misalignments or this or that. Like people also just collect like weird and niche stuff and are willing to pay a premium for that as well. And that's not on the physical comic grading scale either, right? But I think the price is pretty much dictated by rarity and mint number. Like that's the way you stand out on VV for the most part with these comics. And you know, it's not another solution that people had was just rate the commons, because I do think the commons with them, like if we had, was it 60,000 mint a 60,000 mint run of a comic, usually there's like what, like 40,000+ of those mints that are in the commons. So like you're much more likely to actually have a common up in like the 10 or like the 9.9 9.8 region, just because they have so many more mints to work with. And plus it's pretty much impossible for some secret rares as well as ultra rares to get above like a 9.6 and 9.8. Like there's a chance they could get it, but sometimes if they just don't win the random mint lottery, sometimes you could have some secret rares that never touch above a 9.8, which is fine, because like that's kind of how it works in real life too in some way. But that shouldn't necessarily be the case. And I do think in my opinion, I think the biggest issue that we have with something like this, I do think a grading system like this could work in a rough sense if the mint numbers weren't literally randomized across all of the rarities. Like if Veve did a thing where all the commons, let's say there was 40,000 commons, if there was literally mint numbers from 1 to 40,000 for the commons, and then let's say the uncommons had 5,000 additions or 10,000, whatever, then it would start over another 1 to 10,000. And like basically what I'm saying is like if every single rarity had its own low mint tier of like there is a number 1 mint ultra rare, there's a number 1 mint secret rare. If there was something like that, this list could make sense. But just the fact that like the mint numbers are literally jumbled across all of the rarities, some of the comic grading numbers are literally impossible for some rarities, just because it just can't get that high or get that, I guess technically low. This is another thing, it's like low high, like it kind of gets confusing, at least when you're talking about it out loud for the most part. So I think that's one flaw with just the system in and of itself, that's on Veve's end as well. It's just like this grading scale, it just doesn't make sense. And like I said, I think that's pretty much the biggest issue, is that the mint number rarities are just randomized across the entire thing. So I think some possible solutions is taking like rarity into consideration, because that is the way you stand out, right? There's going to be people in the comic book community that are going to be cover art exclusives. All they care about is cover art, so they're going to buy probably the commons as well as some of maybe the uncommon, because it's the same cover art but it's just black and white and maybe colored different regions. That's also why I think some of the original art covers might do the best in the long run, because all we have is like Marvel Comics #1, we have Kang, sorry, not Kang, but we have Fantastic Four #1. There's a few comics that actually the rarities between common and ultra rare is just the cover art, or just like the original cover but just different black and white iterations, and Veve's done with those. So those, I think, in the grand scheme of things, are going to be rated a bit higher, because there's going to be some cover art people that just exclusively cover that, but there'll be some other people that want to stand up by getting Veve art cover exclusives, because it doesn't matter if they reprint let's say, like I said, Kang, whatever, somewhere else, like there's some Veve art exclusives. Well, technically Kangs are just panel pulls for the most part, but you guys know what I mean. Like the Veve art exclusives are just on Veve. So even if some of these comics get reprinted on other NFT platforms, those are going to still stand out, right? Let alone the fact that we're the first ones to get on the blockchain and all that interesting stuff. So I don't know, like that's I know I kind of like threw a lot at this, and some of the ideas I had were kind of jumbled together, but that's kind of like the feedback that I've had, is that I think this like super linear, like literally mathematical linear scale, because it just doesn't work out like that in real life. If we're trying to compare it to real life, it doesn't work out like that in real life either. It's not a super linear scale. A ton of people don't turn their stuff in. There could be someone out there with a 9.8 and we just don't know it, right? For the most part, Another thing they could do is, like I said, just leave it for the commons, like just rate the commons, because that is the cover art, that is the actual cover. And hey, we're just rating the commons, but if you do have the other rarities, that is its own thing, and it's very subjective. That's another option. Another thing I had was like, maybe they should just start at 8.5 and just say, hey, if you own an 8, or technically if you're in the, you know, I guess it says top 15. So if you're basically if you're in the bottom 80%, that's just floor price. That's what they could say. Again, there's going to be some special mints and additions in there. Like even some mints like I said, the Ghost Rider 666, that's kind of my thing that I've been trying to get. You know, if someone wants to collect one of the Fantastic Four comics that just has mint number 4444, you know, because it has 4 4s in it, Fantastic Four, that just makes sense. So I think it's just so subjective in the NFT comic collecting, just like community. And like I said, who knows, maybe it's probably not going to be this grading system, but there could be a ranking system as well that could replace it. And I think that's another thing, like I said earlier, is I think some people do have issue with calling it a grading system, because grading it means that there's supposed to be some sort of defect, or you know, it's supposed to be physical defect or whatever, and that 10 is perfect, but all these other ones have some sort of defect. There's something wrong with them, there's something incorrect, there's some sort of flaw in these things. But realistically, it's just how they're minted. And I understand comic book collectors want to find ways to stand out. I think the ways that we already do that with NFTs is by rarity, by mint number, and if you want to do some sort of ranking scale thing, I think that's fine. But I think basically, you know, because if a comic book collector sees this, you know, I don't know that many comic book collectors that are willingly wanting to buy a 1.5. You know, I think the example that was given, like a secret rare Marvel Comics #1 was a 1.5. That's kind of exception. The Marvel comic secret rares, they weren't exclusively given like that mint number. They technically, there was only a certain amount, but it could have been any variation. So they changed that later, which is why I think Marvel comic, you know, secret rare actually had a 1.5 rating. So a bit hit and miss there. And I do, in my personal opinion, I do think there's a certain balance between scarcity but also low mint that gives it a lot of its value. I do think secret rares are going to be the highest mint possible, are going to be the highest price possible. Could a day come where an extremely low mint common will actually be more expensive than a floor secret rare? Maybe one day, and I bet it's already happened in some instances. But then again, that's just the asking price, right? That means no one's buying the common at that price, and so far no one's buying that secret rare for that price either. Those are just asking prices. So I don't know, I'll probably formulate some more questions. If you guys have any comments or questions that you guys would like to have be asked or answered or whatever in the kind of the, I don't know if it's like an AMA, whatever Comics and Crypto called it, for tomorrow. It's at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time. I would love to jump in that Twitter space, just kind of listen and understand what's going on, because mostly I just wanted to understand the thought process behind all this. Like, how'd you guys come up with this scale? And again, I love this look. Like, this look is amazing and it's great. And maybe something like this kind of this rating system should only be reserved for the top, you know, 5, 10, 15% of mints, and that's it, because these are the whales. This is what they want. Like, cool. But everything else, floor price, I think just like completely degrading or dumpstering on all the other rarities just because they didn't win the random number lottery. Not exactly sure about that, but yeah. So that's pretty much it. If I have any other things I want to mention or anything like that down in the comments below, I'll do that. But in the meantime, again, I don't think we should be acting extremely negative or be assuming people are trying to pump their bags or anything like that. If people want to do it and say whatever they want, like that's fine. But I don't like accusing people of trying to pump their bags in general. Like I said, even if they are, it doesn't matter to me. It's a free market, you know. Like, I can come out with my own ranking system about NFTs, and if people don't agree with it and don't like it, like, the market's going to reflect that. At the end of the day, Comics and Crypto, whoever can say whatever they want, but unless the community accepts it on a mass scale, it's not going to really do much. Although, like I said, you know, these kind of charts, or this kind of like slabbing system looks really cool. I don't even know sure if I use that term correctly, slabbing. So I hope that makes sense. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I know this was a long rant, I apologize, but yeah, I'm definitely going to be in the talk tomorrow and probably asking some questions if I'm called up and going from there. So hope you guys the best, and please check out Comics and Crypto. Don't let this get in the way of, like, they still give us amazing information day in and day out. I've been listening to them since almost day one, since I started on Veve back in Golden Moments, and they've helped me with a lot of purchasing decisions since then. So hope you guys take care. Make sure to double and triple check all of your listings so you don't screw yourself over, and I'll catch you guys next time.